Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. And today we're going to talk about math and martial arts, which I absolutely look forward to. This particular video was inspired by Shang-Chi, which I saw recently. It absolutely lives up to the hype. It was dope. It worked as a film in general. It worked really well as a martial arts film. I really enjoyed it. And it was the kind of movie where it works with the larger MCU picture, but it works on its own fairly well. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk about several things in this video. I'm going to talk about how math plays a role in martial arts, but there's going to be some build up to that because I want to talk about martial arts in general, right? I want to talk about different styles. I want to talk about different things involved in it, like what you could use it for. I want to talk about how, yes, you can use it for your mind, for your body, for your spirit. You can use it for sport. You can use it for entertainment. There's layers to it. And with that entertainment, right, you see it in TV shows and movies and games and books. There's a lot to it. And so I want to talk about all of that and how math is used in all of that. I plan to have fun with it. I hope if you're watching that you learned something or you walked away with a different perspective. And if you have anything to add to the conversation, please do. So without further ado, let's get into it. So with martial arts, right, I feel like we all have our own idea of it, and I find it like hard to believe that there would be many people in this world that haven't been exposed to it in some way, shape, or form. But with that in mind, martial arts, I think a good way to describe it is it's an umbrella term for different fighting styles and systems. And at this point in history, with the exception of Antarctica, because there are no humans there, every continent has martial arts. Several. And it's wild. It's awesome. And the idea is, it may not always be what you think, right? Because there are unarmed and armed martial arts, right? And there are some that we're used to seeing like karate and kung fu, but that's not all, right? Because we're also used to boxing and wrestling, and we might not think of those as martial arts, but they are. And there's so many out there, and if I can remember, I'll put a list in the description for that. But I mentioned karate, kung fu, wrestling, boxing. There's also jeet kune do. There's aikido, tai chi, muay thai, pencak silat. There's so many. And by the way, that one's the Indonesian style. It's an umbrella term for Indonesian styles of martial arts and used heavily in the raid. But we'll get to that. There's also all the ones I mentioned so far are unarmed, but there's also like kendo. There's CQC, close quarters combat, also known as CQB, close quarters battle. And so you have things like that. And some people would count archery in that. But my whole point is that there are a lot of styles, and like all the ones that I have mentioned, they don't even come close to all the ones that are out there. And it's wild to me. But with each of them, they take discipline, they take skill, and to build all that up, it takes repetition. And among other things. And with that repetition, there's a lot of math in that to start, but it goes further than that. So what I'm going to do is talk about some things in general that could be applied to different martial arts, and then I want to get into the more sports side of it and entertainment side of things. So it should be fun. So yeah. So when it comes to martial arts, it brings together so many things, and you'll hear different things, right? You'll hear mind, body, technique. You'll hear mind, body, spirit. You'll hear all that, and I feel like those are all useful to think about. And so, as you're building up your martial arts skills, right? There are some things that really do come with it. I feel like in general, one of the big things is, like I mentioned, repetition, right? So practicing those moves time and time again, keeping count, but that's not all. In order to help you get more discipline with your body, regular exercise is needed. and it's part of training yourself with any given style, right? If you want to get good at it, if you want to be disciplined, if you want to have some strength, right? So, and with that exercise, there comes a lot with it, right? Because there's the idea of repetition as well. You're doing different sets of different activities, right? And with those activities, there's a lot of force that comes in your body, so you have to be careful of that. You have to be cautious of that. And there's math in that, right? There's math in the sets of exercises that you do. There's math in the force that you're exerting on your body. And then you got that issue of fueling your body, right? There's a lot of math in the chemistry and biology involved. There's a lot of math in the amount of calories that you're consuming. There's a lot of math in burning off those calories. And it's just, there's a lot of math in everything, right? A lot of physics, a lot of motion, a lot of math, right? And the idea is, in addition to exercise, and increasing your strength, your speed, your flexibility, your stamina, and all of that, which that's mathematical in nature too, right? You were at one point, everything increased if you're careful about it. But the other idea is there are things like coordination. I don't think it is a far jump to say that dancing, martial arts, and gymnastics have a lot in common, right? They all deal with mastering your body, and there's a lot of overlaps, and sometimes you'll see that in different martial arts. And it's also not uncommon for some martial artists to also take dance classes. All of it is connected. You want to be able to coordinate yourself. You want to be able to be stable. You want to be able to be consistent. And when you're doing all of these things, it really helps with martial arts in general. And then with different styles, you have to have a good sense of the movement, right? You have to have a good sense of geometry and physics, right? And you may not always be writing it down, but you are doing the math, right? Because you're figuring out where your hands should go, or your feet, or your elbows, or your knees. And you're figuring out how much force you should be exerting, right? And then I want to take all that and kind of pivot into the more sports side of things, because there's layers to that, right? And there's a lot of different martial arts competitions out there, and depending on the kind you want to do, you'll have to adjust the kind of math that you're doing in your head while you're doing the martial arts, right? So if you're in a competition and there's light to medium contact, you want to be extra careful, right? You're going to have to pull your punches. You're going to have a really good idea of how much force you're putting into things, right? You're going to have a very good idea about where your opponent is in relation to you, right? And what's coming your way. So even though we don't think about it, there's a lot of math going on with martial arts. Martial arts is cool, and there's a lot of math going on in it, and I don't feel like that gets talked about that much. But yeah, so if you're in that position where you're in a competition and there's light to medium contact, you have to be extra careful, right? So the idea is you're trying to score hits on people, right? Or you're trying to knock them out of the ring, whatever the case may be. But so if you're trying to score points, you want to be careful, right? Because you're not only pulling your punches, you're not only being careful of your force, but you're making sure you don't do any illegal moves. So, you're really getting a good handle on your physics, or rather, you have to have a good handle on your physics to be able to do well in this competition, whether you realize it or not. And you also have to have a good sense of geometry and the spaces that you're in. Partially so, you keep track of you and your opponent and how you're moving, but also the ring itself, right? And then there's the idea of scoring, right? There's math in that. And then if you have a full contact sort of, competition, it's a different beast. A lot of the same things still apply, but, you're going to be adjusting, because you don't want to do too much damage, but you have to do enough damage, because the idea is in some of these competitions, the idea is to knock the opponent out. And in some cases, scoring might still happen, but it may be more of a backup than anything. But you want to keep that in mind. You want to keep everything about your opponent in mind. So things change slightly, but you're still doing the math. It's just a little bit more dangerous. So you have to make sure you're doing okay with that. And so there's a lot that goes into the sports side of it too, right? Because a lot of cases, martial arts have been known to make some money, right? whether we're talking about boxing, wrestling, or UFC, or if you prefer mixed martial arts, MMA. There's a lot of money to be made, right? There's a lot of build up, and there's a lot of math that goes into all that too, right? Because there's a lot of math, a lot of formulas going on here, right? You're building up the hype. You have faces, you have heels, you have people playing out a part. You might have actual rivalries, you might have generated rivalries, but everything is calculated, right? And even deviations to a degree are calculated, right? And the idea is that there's a lot of money to be made. And there's math in that money, right? There's math in the merchandising because of that said money. There's math in how you get all of these things out. Some of these events are paid per view, and as a consumer, you have to decide what's worth it to you. Is it just a regular match where you haven't had that much investment in, or is it a large scale event? Because that may decide how you want to watch this, if you want to watch this. And then you have your viewing event, right? Because you could be watching on your phone, but you could be watching on a big screen. What do you want to do? There's math in all of these decisions. Yeah, so it is wild to me. But it's interesting because we don't talk about all this stuff, but it's happening all the time. None of this stuff happens without math. The martial arts don't happen without the math. The marketing, the merchandising, none of it happens without the math. But that in mind, I want to talk about the entertainment side because this is a good pivot for it, right? Because not only are wrestling, MMA, and boxing all sports, but they're also pausing. They're also entertainment, right? And I think that's interesting because one of the things that you're also considering is stats, right? Whether you're the person fighting in the ring, the manager, team owner, or whatever. Team owner sounded like a weird thing to say, but you might have different. You might have someone representing different martial artists. But my whole point though is like whether you're them or the fan, there's a lot of math to consider in the stats involved, right? Like how much does this person weigh? How tall are they? And how many wins have they had? How many losses? How many draws? And if you're studying their style, like how effective has there been? There's different ways to explore that. But the whole point is like whether you realize it or not, you're keeping track of the stats, and I guarantee you, the people themselves are, like the combatants are, as well as everyone pulling together the event. But outside of sports, right? Martial arts has been a big thing, and since like the 70s, it's really blown up, right? Because you see it at sporting events, you see it in cinema. Over time, you've seen it in games, and it's really cool to me, right? Because if we start with well, not Star Wars because we already talked about sports, but if we continue and we talk about cinema, there's been a lot of martial arts movies, too many to list. But when I'm thinking about some of those, I think about I just watched Shang-Chi, but there are other ones that I've enjoyed over the years. You have the Raid 2, the One, and if you're unfamiliar with the One, it is the one where Jet Li is so deadly that the only person that can take on Jet Li is Jet Li, pretty much. And it ends up being a movie where Jet Li is fighting off against different versions of himself from different alternate universes. It ends up being pretty cool. It also had Drowning Pool among other people on the album track, and that was pretty cool. A lot of early 2000s metal going on. But anyway, these films though, so those were just like a few, but there's other ones too. So many. I don't know why I'm thinking about the Three Ninjas, but that was a martial arts comedy one. But there's different ones too, right? There's The Protector, that was a good one. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that's a classic one, and that one happens to deal with weapons. There's that one that I can't remember, but it had RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan and Keanu Reeves in it. I cannot remember it, but the title anyway. But there's that. There's Chocolate. There's a lot of good ones. There's the Ip Man series. There's some other ones that I'm thinking of that I can't remember some of the names of them, but I remember people like Cynthia Rothrock. She's really cool. And she had some like different martial arts movies like back in the day. And she's still going and doing things, by the way. And you have some big names that come out of these things, like you have Jet Li, Tony Jaa, Iko Uwe, um, a lot of different people. Um, and the thing about it is there's a lot of math in how everything comes together for the films, right? Because not only is there math involved with the martial artists and they're practicing and building up their skills, there's a lot of math in how things are filmed, right? There's math in how things are cut. There's math in the editing. There's math on what type of film you use, right? There's math in what size film you use. There's math in the marketing. There's math in the geometry involved of getting together the sets. There's math in creating the sets. There's math in the lighting, right? There's math in the script and telling the story in a certain way. There's math in the different types of genre that you're using, right? Because there's a lot of different type of martial arts movies, but there's also like so many different subgenres, right? Because you have the revenge movies, you have the thrillers, you have the comedies, and there's math in each and every one of those and how they come across to the uh, viewer. And the thing is, with all of these movies, timing is involved. Like careful coordination is involved. Stunt work is involved. We know whether the martial artist is doing their own stunts or not. They have to be careful. The idea is to not actually damage someone, right? And so there's a lot of math in that consideration. A lot of math in what the actors are getting paid. A lot of math in what you're paying, and the decisions you make when you're watching these movies. There's just so much to consider. It's everywhere and in everything, right? And again, like I mentioned, some of the like movies that I've liked, but there's so many martial arts movies. And the thing is, it shows up not only in these movies, but also anime and manga, comic books, games, all of it. And so when I think about it, and like when it comes to anime and manga, I can't help but think about Dragon Ball, one of my favorite franchises of all time. And here's the thing about Dragon Ball, right? Fighting is at the root of it. So you not only have like the characters training and doing the martial arts, which involves a lot of math, which I mentioned, but how things are viewed in these worlds are key because when you get to the Dragon Ball Z section of the story, one of the big things is like power levels or battle power if you prefer. And the idea is that you have scouters and they let you know how powerful an opponent is, at that given moment. And what's interesting about that is Dragon Ball is giving you this powerful lesson about math and stat and data analysis. And to me, that's a beautiful thing because story-wise, it's meant to convey how far the characters are coming. But at the same time, it's also meant to be deceptive because take the Frieza soldiers, for instance, right? And even Vegeta in the beginning when he was introduced, they all go over like they're all obsessed with power and numbers and data, and they do get information from this data. And for a lot of them, they don't know how to raise or lower their power level, so it's like pretty cut and dry. And they have this whole system designed about power. But the things about the Earthlings and their martial arts ability is they are so in tune with themselves that key control is essential for them to build their martial arts skills, but it's also something they can use to deceive their opponents, right? Because they can raise it or they can lower it at will. And they can concentrate it into a single point, not only raising it, but also doing a lot of damage. They can really throw people off. And there's a lot of math in that. And so, even though you have people with scouters and they're getting this information, they don't have the full context because to them, they weren't aware that the Earthlings could do this. And I think that's interesting because they are trying to make sense of the world, and to the best of their abilities, they are doing it. But there are some exceptions to that, and I think that's interesting. And that Toriyama played around with that. And so here's what's even more interesting, or about as interesting. They're on the same level for me. But so it's not just what happens on the page or on the screen; it's what's happening outside of it. Because a lot of people who are Dragon Ball fans clung to the idea of power level. And I think that's interesting because it gets to the root of what we're trying to do in real life with math, right? Math is happening all the time and everywhere, but when we learn it in a class or we like use it in a professional setting, we're trying to make sense of what's going on in the universe. We're trying to say something about the past, the present, the future, ourselves and other people, right? And so a lot of people clung on to the idea of power levels because they want to make sense about what's going on in the series. You have these characters and they're getting increasingly powerful. So when you look at power levels, it lets you gauge what's going on better. But they started to get like really out of control during like the Frieza saga slash Namek saga, whatever you want to call it, right? Because you get some pretty crazy leaps, right? Like Goku, his base is about like 8,000. When he's fighting Vegeta, by the time he fights Frieza and he has like gone Super Saiyan, he's at 150 million for his power level, which is an insane jump. But even if you just don't worry about the Super Saiyan part for a second, his base was 3 million. And with this idea though, it's like a lot of these like the later values are given in the Dazinchu 7, like Toriyama routed some values, and like around the saga, that's the time where you stop seeing like that. But we're still trying to find ways to power scale down the line, even if we don't have the numbers, right? We're trying to gauge feats, and there's something that's very mathematical in its nature, because we're seeing the martial arts, we're seeing the use, but we're like, well, how powerful is this person? How powerful is this person? And there is this idea that people have to be in control of their ki so that they just don't destroy everything all the time, right? And it's just like, so it leads to some tricky issues with scaling. But I digress heavily. But but my whole point is, in Dragon Ball, you have this story surrounded like that is like surrounded by fighting, that is about fighting, that is about martial arts, and ki control is a big thing. And one way to talk about ki control, one thing to talk about people and their power, is to talk about power levels and power scaling. I think that's interesting. But moving on, um, I will say there's also math in depicting that martial arts, right? There's math in the manga going page to page, right? There's math in the number of panels that are used and how they're used. There's geometry involved when you're drawing the characters and when you're animating that. There's math in the animation, right? There's math in bringing motion to that world. There's math in how you're depicting speed. There's math in how you're depicting impact. There's math in the coloring involved in the anime, in the manga. But moving outside of Dragon Ball, I will say that you get a lot of other fighting animes, like in that shonen genre, right? You get things like Naruto, you get things like Bleach, and you get so many different anime and manga franchises that deal with martial arts, and some that may have taken every inspiration from Dragon Ball. But the whole point is there's a lot of math in how all these things are done and how they're marketed and how it all comes across. And then you got the idea of games, and I think that's interesting because, like, right, you have games where fighting might not be the main point, but it's in there. Like, I think about Metal Gear Solid, for instance. Like, over the course of the series, the fighting goes from really basic punching and kicking to something more deliberate, like CQC. And there's a lot of math in that progression. There's a lot of math in what's going on, right? There's math in the number of kicks that you can do, number of punches that you can do, followed by a kick. There's math in the timing with that. There's math in the weapon use with CQC, right? You could use your knife and your gun while you're just like dropping people to the floor. And there's a lot of math and how this all functions and flows. But then you have stuff where like fighting is literally the point, and then you get into fighting games, for instance, right? Where you're dealing with these characters that have different martial arts, and there's math in how those things are depicted and how well those things are depicted. There's math in the number of hits you could do. There's math in the combination that forms as a result. There's math in the timing of those hits. There's math in your health. There's math in any special ability that you may be doing. So you're seeing these like martial arts in action, and you are performing it. And then if you got VR into the mix, you have to consider your body even more than you already were. And there's math in buying all these games. There's math in the programming in all these games. There's math everywhere and everything. And so this is getting kind of long. So my whole thing is that, like, right, martial arts by its very nature is mathematical. There's math in the martial arts themselves. There's math in the exercising that helps with that. There's math in the diet and nutrition that comes along with it. There's math in building up your mind, your body, your spirit, and your technique. There's math in taking martial arts and bringing it to a sports setting. There's math in bringing it to an entertainment like a setting. And there's math in different areas of that because, right, you have games, you have comics, you have manga, you have anime. There's so, live action stuff. There's so much math in all of this stuff. Martial arts is cool. It's really popular, and it makes a lot of money routinely. And there's a lot of math in that too. And so for me, I've had some formal training, and I've had some informal training, in different martial arts. And whatever the case may be, whatever I learned, I always dug deeper. So if whether it was the formal training, the informal training, or watching different people, watching different things, reading up, I always did more, always learned more. Martial arts and exercise are like really important to me in my life, and they've helped me through some dark times. And it's interesting because I feel like when I'm practicing or when I'm exercising, I need to be in the right state of mind to do it. And so it's just kind of a conundrum, right? I need to get into that state to like help me deal with like my depression, or just other rough stuff in life. But I have to get there first. And so that's something that has been trickier for me. And there's a lot of math and how all that works, believe it or not, right? Because I have to like be at that right state, and it's like even if I know what that right state is, it can be tricky getting there. And sometimes I have to push myself, but not push myself too much. Sometimes it's just about showing up. But I'm very, very routine about like in general when it comes to exercise and when it comes to practicing martial arts, because like you have to have that repetition and you have to have that routine, and you want to build your flexibility, you want to build your stamina, your strength, and your speed. And it can be tricky to upkeep all that. And I know for me, I'm also considering, my diet and all this. I, largely try to make the best decisions, but there are definitely times where I don't, and it does affect you. That affects your performance. That affects weight gain, weight loss, and all that, and energy levels. So there's so much math in deciding what you're going to do when you're working out or when you're practicing martial arts, and doing those things together. There's a lot to consider. And so I'm saying this though. Like over the time, like I've created my own style, the Prime style, and it's hybridized, and it's mostly at this point in my life, I do it all still because it helps me deal with my depression. It helps me with discipline and in controlling myself, and also it's cool. So yeah, I'm a big fan of martial arts. I'm a big fan of exercising. I'm a big fan of all that. And again, like one of the things that I was saying in the beginning is martial arts, dancing, and gymnastics all have a lot of common. It's all about motion. It's all about choreography, repetition, dedication, having proper diet, the proper energy levels. They're all connected. They all work beautifully together, and it's something worth considering. There's a lot of math in martial arts and all those other things that I mentioned. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day.